Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me today is Emmett Gates, and we're going to start today by discussing the centre half that all the big clubs in Europe seem to be discussing at the moment. Josko Gvardiol of RB Leipzig and Croatia, of course. Jurgen Klopp's reportedly pushing to sign Gvardiol in the summer. Firstly, Emmett, how far up down the priorities list in the summer do you think a new centre-back's going to be for Liverpool?
I mean, it's a tricky one. We all kind of recognise, and I'm sure it doesn't. Jurgen Klopp doesn't need us to say, but we all know Liverpool need a bit of a revolution in midfield. They need at least two or three midfielders. One, even if they get Jude Bellingham, it's not enough. So I do think fixing the midfield is the Klopp's biggest priority, and that means not just getting in Bellingham, but getting in at least two, possibly three midfielders. In terms of like central defense, I mean, they have been, every one of them, probably bar Ibrahima Konate, has been vulnerable this season. But if you believe the latest reports, Klopp is open to selling Joel Matip at the end of the season anywhere between 10 to 15 million pounds. And so you'd imagine then that a replacement will be brought in, to keep the four central defenders. Obviously, there's cover for every type of competition and competition for places. Whether he wants to spend about £100 million on Josko Gvardiol is a different matter entirely. It's one thing selling Joel Matip for 10 to 15 million, but then you have to fork out another 85, say, if you're going to bring in Gvardiol. A, considering how good he performed at the World Cup, and B, the competition to sign him. There's Real Madrid is sniffing around, Man City's in the mix. So it's obviously going to drive up his price, and RB Leipzig can pretty much ask for whatever kind of, money that they want. And as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's got €100 million release clause in his contract. I can't see Liverpool paying that either, to be honest, because, as we said, fixing the midfield is the priority. And you'd imagine that's the way the route the club will go down in the summer. So while they probably do need a central defender, because I think Matip and Gomez, I think, have been very vulnerable this season. I don't think Gomez is going to get back to anything close to what he was pre-injury. Matip has been a great servant, I think, but I think his multiple injuries, Matip never really had serious injuries in the way that Van Dijk did and Gomez did, but he's got a lot of niggling injuries, and I think it's kind of caught up with him this year. He's looked remarkably off the pace in a lot of games. So I think you need maybe one or two of them could leave, but I to be honest, I can't see Liverpool spending that amount of money on a centre back.
Yeah, it's interesting where Joe Matip plays into this all, really, because I think probably if we hadn't last season managed to keep Matip fit, have pretty much his most injury-free season for the club, he's obviously been a very injury-prone player before that. I think it probably would have been a bit glaringly obvious last season that they probably needed a centre-back, and would they have gone and got one last summer? Who knows? Obviously, there was a bit of a lack of investment over the summer, but like you say, difficult to see how Liverpool are going to go and get such a highly rated centre back in, especially given, like you say, RB Leipzig can pretty much ask what they want, and there's going to be a lot of competition to sign him. He's one of the most highly rated young centre backs going. So, how difficult do you think it would be for Liverpool to pull off a signing like that, given the competition? I mean, there's a slight advantage, I suppose, in that he has come out in the past and said he was a Liverpool fan as a kid. So, I suppose we've got that slight edge, but other than that, it'd be pretty difficult to get him out of Leipzig and into Liverpool as opposed to anywhere else, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, how many? You mentioned there that he said he was a Liverpool fan growing up, but how many times have we seen players that were fans of X team when they were growing up? How many of them actually end up eventually transferring to the team of their childhood? It's very rare. I think for him it'll come down to A, money, and B, where can he win trophies, or where will he be guaranteed football? And you'd imagine if Liverpool, say, theoretically, if Liverpool were to go in and sign him, you'd imagine Jurgen Klopp would say, right, your partner, and your partner is Virgil van Dijk, and that's it. But then it's like, well, what about Kanate? Who's been probably Liverpool's best defender this season, you would say. That's one thing. But then it's, you're trying to fight off Real Madrid and Man City. And as you know, Eddie, the allure of Real Madrid just seems to trump every other club. There's not that much you can do about it. It's just if Real Madrid are seriously contemplating you, and if you're an established star, it's like, yeah, they pretty much have the upper hand and anything if they're willing to pay the money. And it's hard to fight against them. And then Man City, of course, they have the money and they've got the Pep Guardiola factor. So it is unbelievably tough. And as you said, I just can't see Liverpool right now anyway stumping up that kind of money for Guardiola when you consider what the state of the midfield and what has to be done. So, to be honest, I would put this on the unrealistic spectrum as opposed to, it could happen.
Yeah, I think another point suggesting that maybe might not happen. I'm pretty sure Gvardiol plays on the left side as well, and obviously Van Dijk and Robertson have had that side on lockdown for however many years. So whether that would mean Gvardiol having to shift to the right or maybe Virgil, but like I say, we'll see if he did come in the summer. Pretty unlikely, as you say. But we'll move on now to Curtis Jones impressed in a game for England under-21s. If I'll be honest, when I saw that, I was pretty shocked myself that he was still available for the England team. I think everybody forgets how young he is. But came on and got a goal and assist against France. The goal, I don't know if you saw it, Emmett, but really reminiscent of Darwin Núñez against Real Madrid. But yeah, do you think he's going to be looking to sort of force a way into Jurgen Klopp's plans for the first team for the rest of the season?
You know what? I had actually kind of forgot about Curtis Jones this season because of everything that's going on and Liverpool's troubles and difficulties. I'd actually kind of forgot that Curtis Jones existed just because I think his development has stalled massively over the last 12 months. There was a point where it looked like he was on the cusp of breaking into the team, regularly and, claiming a spot in midfield. But he's just had one too many injuries and he's just fallen down the packet order. And there was a time in the middle of last season, I think, that Jurgen Klopp kind of publicly, said he needs to do better and he's not a young boy anymore, and we can't wait for him. He's 22 now, so back then he was 21. The time is now he needs to fulfill his potential, and a year later, and I think we both agree, Eddie, that he still hasn't fulfilled his potential. He's still he's still a prospect, you would say, and he's 22, and there's clearly talent there. But I think a lot of it too is what's his best position. Some people think he's better on the left side of an attacking three. Others think he's maybe in the left side of a midfield three. I think trying to find a position for him has been tough. And even with Liverpool's midfield difficulties this year, he hasn't really got much of a look in. He's played, 8-9 games all season. And I don't know. Part of me thinks that maybe he needs to move away. If next season, say, is kind of follows a similar pattern of this season and last season, you kind of think at 23, is he really going to make it into the Liverpool team full time? He's had a weird 12 months. I just don't know if he can get back to being the player that he was kind of maybe about 2 years ago. When it did look like he was on the cusp of breaking into the team regularly. But I mean, it was a lovely finish, and yeah, he clearly has the talent. I just think trying to A, keep him fit, and B, find his best position. And I don't know if a 4-3-3 actually works for him, because I mean, say, for example, the left side of midfield, once Luis Diaz is fit, it's Diaz's position. No one is taking that from him. So he's not going to be on the left side of the front three. In midfield, he's been played there. Sometimes he's been good, others not. So I think it's tough to try and shoehorn him into Jurgen Klopp's 4-3-3. And I don't think Klopp is going to pivot from that formation anytime soon. So yeah, I think there's clearly talent there. And as we saw the goal against France, he has a lot of ability. I just don't know what the future holds or where he fits. And if Liverpool have a bit of a revolution in midfield in the summer, he could get lost in the shuffle in a way. If they bring in 2 or 3 men, I know obviously a couple of players will leave, but we could be sitting here in a year's time and he's in the exact same position.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there about position wise. There just doesn't really seem to be somewhere he fits in well in that Jurgen Klopp system. Toby in the comments there saying he's a very dynamic cam during his apprenticeship. Obviously, the way Jurgen Klopp uses the 4-3-3, there isn't really a number 10, a cam position.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the 4-2-3-1, maybe you could fit in there with Firmino going. But again, there's so many other players ahead of him. Like you mentioned with that left side, you've got Diaz coming back. That's pretty much a lock. And then if you look beyond Diaz, it'd be Nunes, it'd be Gakpo well before it'd possibly be Harvey Elliott from what we've seen this season, way before it would be Curtis Jones. And I think you're right. I think if he wasn't English, homegrown, came all the way through at the club, I think he'd have gone the way of Jordan Ibe, Dominic Solanke by now. I think he'd been sold for a pretty decent profit to a lower table Premier League side. I think he sort of managed to get through a bit. Obviously, he has had some injuries, but sort of going through on the goodwill that he has earned with fans. Obviously, you remember that goal against Everton that he scored. Everyone thought that was going to be his breakthrough moment, and he hasn't really kicked on too much since then. So it's a bit of an interesting one. I think you're right. I think maybe might be the right time for a move away, especially with that midfield reshuffle coming in the summer, hopefully. But that is all we're going to have time for here on the Morning Bulletin today. So, Emmett, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.